The INFJ male often finds himself wrestling with what is commonly called the white knight syndrome. This is the deep, almost compulsive urge to save, protect, or heal others, especially those who seem vulnerable, damaged, or in distress. While this quality can make INFJ men some of the most compassionate and selfless individuals, it also places them at great risk of being drained, manipulated, or chronically unfulfilled in relationships and life. The INFJ male white knight tendencies lies his natural empathy. Unlike many others who may brush off the pain of those around them, the INFJ man feels it almost as if it were his own. When he encounters someone broken or struggling, it triggers something deep inside him, a calling to help and fix what is wounded. This isn't a shallow sense of duty, it's woven into his identity. He believes, often unconsciously, that part of his purpose is to alleviate suffering wherever he finds it. For the INFJ male, this is not just kindness, it's a mission. However, this noble instinct comes at a cost. Because INFJ men are wired to see beneath the surface, they often notice wounds and struggles in people long before others do. This heightened awareness makes them highly attractive to individuals who crave care, but may not be capable of reciprocating it in a healthy way. The INFJ man then finds himself in relationships where he is giving endlessly, pouring out emotional energy in the hope that he can heal the other person. He convinces himself that if he loves deeply enough, sacrifices enough, or remains loyal enough, he can transform pain into healing. This, unfortunately, often leaves him entangled with partners or friends who exploit his compassion without ever truly changing. If you're an INFJ, ensure to check out our INFJ Mastery Toolkit. The link is in the description of this video. The white knight syndrome in INFJ men is also tied to their perfectionistic tendencies and their sense of responsibility. They do not simply want to be good men. They want to be exceptional men, noble and honorable in ways that transcend the ordinary. Protecting and rescuing others feeds this inner narrative of being someone uniquely selfless and strong. On a subconscious level, they may feel validated when they're needed, when their efforts are recognized as heroic. This creates a subtle loop in which they begin to seek out people who are wounded, because being a savior makes them feel purposeful. Yet what begins as purpose can quickly become a trap. The INFJ male's white knight role often blinds him to the reality that not everyone wants to be saved, and not everyone who needs saving is willing to grow. He may cling to unhealthy relationships far longer than he should, holding on to the belief that with enough time and effort, things will improve. His fierce loyalty, which is normally one of his greatest strengths, becomes the very chain that binds him to toxicity. Many INFJ men look back on their past and see a trail of relationships where they gave everything and received little in return. On a deeper level, the white knight syndrome in INFJ men also reveals something about their inner wounds. Many INFJ males struggle with feelings of being misunderstood, unseen, or undervalued in their own lives. When they step into the role of savior, they often project onto others what they secretly wish someone would do for them: to be deeply understood, supported, and cherished despite their flaws. Saving others becomes a way of compensating for the lack of rescue they themselves feel they never received. In this way, their empathy is as much about healing themselves as it is about healing others. As INFJ men mature and reflect, many come to recognize the dangers of the white knight syndrome. They learn that true love and compassion are not about rescuing someone at the cost of their own well-being, but about creating balance, reciprocity, and mutual respect. They begin to understand that while their instinct to heal is beautiful, it must be tempered with boundaries. Loving someone does not mean fixing them. It means walking beside them while they take responsibility for their own growth. When INFJ men begin to release the compulsion to save, they reclaim their strength. They stop seeking out brokenness as a way of defining themselves, and instead focus on building relationships with those who meet them as equals. Their empathy remains intact, but it is no longer weaponized against their own peace. They continue to inspire, to guide, and to nurture, but they do so from a place of balance rather than self-sacrifice. In this healthier state, the INFJ male still embodies the archetype of the protector, but he no longer feels responsible for carrying the entire weight of another's healing. When INFJ men finally recognize the white knight syndrome in their lives, it is often after years of exhaustion and heartbreak. They come to a point where the cost of constantly rescuing others outweighs the fulfillment it once brought. This awakening usually doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in quietly, after sleepless nights of overthinking, after realizing that despite all their sacrifice, the other person has not changed, or after facing the painful truth that their love was appreciated only when it served a need. It is in these moments that INFJ men begin to see how much of themselves they have given away in the name of being noble. What makes this realization so profound is that it challenges the very foundation of their identity. For so long, the INFJ male has tied his worth to what he can do for others, how much pain he can absorb, and how much healing he can bring. To step back from that role feels, at first, like abandoning who he is. The guilt can be crushing. He wonders if he is becoming selfish, if he is betraying his values by refusing to play savior anymore. Yet as he wrestles with these feelings, he also begins to notice the quiet relief that comes with reclaiming his boundaries. The paradox is that by letting go of the compulsion to save, he starts to feel stronger, clearer, and more whole. This transition is not easy. INFJ men are haunted by their empathy, which still draws them to people in pain. They still sense the unspoken wounds in others, still notice the cracks behind the smiles. But the difference now lies in how they respond. Instead of rushing in to fix everything, they learn to pause. They learn that their compassion can take the form of listening rather than rescuing, of offering encouragement rather than carrying another's burden. They discover that being a source of light does not require martyrdom. As they embrace this healthier approach, the quality of their relationships changes dramatically. No longer are they magnets for those who exploit their empathy, because their boundaries act as a filter. The people who remain in their lives are those who respect and value them as much as they give in return. This balance allows INFJ men to experience a depth of connection they always longed for, but rarely found in their white knight years. Instead of being needed for what they can provide, they are cherished for who they truly are. On a deeper psychological level, overcoming the white knight syndrome allows INFJ men to heal parts of themselves they didn't even realize were wounded. They recognize that their compulsion to rescue was, in part, a cry from their own inner child, a part of them that longed for someone to step in, protect, and care for them in ways the world often didn't. By setting boundaries and honoring their needs, they begin to give themselves the love they always extended to others. In doing so, they become whole. The later stages of an INFJ male's journey with the white knight syndrome often lead to wisdom and leadership. Having walked through the cycles of overgiving, disillusionment, and renewal, they now possess a deep understanding of human dynamics. They can spot toxic patterns from afar, not only in their own lives, but in the lives of others, and they often become guides for those caught in the same traps they once endured. Their stories of sacrifice and awakening become lifelines for others who are learning to break free from unhealthy dynamics. And yet, even after growth, the white knight impulse never disappears completely. It remains a quiet part of the INFJ male's heart, the instinct to protect, to heal, to care. But what changes is the wisdom that now shapes that instinct. Instead of pouring endlessly into those who do not value their effort, INFJ men begin to channel their protective energy into causes, communities, or people who truly benefit from it. They become protectors of justice, advocates for truth, and builders of safe spaces where others can grow without draining them in the process. As INFJ men move beyond the entanglement of the white knight syndrome, a remarkable transformation begins to unfold in how they live their lives. Creativity becomes one of the most powerful outlets for this shift. Many INFJ men turn to writing, art, music, or even public speaking as a way of expressing the insights and lessons that once came from pain. Their art carries a unique authenticity because it is born of lived experience, and it resonates deeply with others who have felt invisible, broken, or misunderstood. By giving shape to emotions that most people cannot articulate, INFJ men transform their past struggles into works of beauty and healing. In this way, the urge to save others is not abandoned but elevated, It becomes a gift to many rather than a burden carried for a few. In careers, the same transformation is evident. No longer willing to play the savior in unhealthy professional dynamics, INFJ men start seeking roles where their natural empathy and vision are assets rather than liabilities. They may gravitate toward counseling, teaching, mentoring, creative industries, or advocacy work. But even in fields not traditionally associated with empathy, their presence changes the environment. They bring a sense of depth and purpose that challenges shallow systems and inspires colleagues to rise above mediocrity. By withdrawing from the rescuer's role in personal relationships, they gain the strength to step into leadership roles where their compassion and foresight create lasting value. In relationships, INFJ men who outgrow the white knight pattern become far more intentional. They no longer confuse love with sacrifice or intimacy with rescuing. Instead, they seek and cultivate bonds where reciprocity, respect, and emotional balance are foundational. This makes their love rarer, but infinitely more powerful. To be loved by an INFJ man at this stage is to be seen fully, supported deeply, but also respected as an equal partner. They no longer give in order to fix. They give because the connection is authentic and nourishing on both sides. Spiritually, this growth often leads INFJ men into profound self-realization. They come to understand that their desire to save others was not a flaw, but a misdirected strength. It was a reflection of their deepest spiritual truth, that life is meant to be lived in service, but service must be rooted in wisdom. They begin to practice discernment, recognizing when their energy will help someone grow and when it will merely enable dysfunction. This spiritual maturity turns them into quiet but powerful figures, the kind of men whose presence itself feels like guidance, even when they say little. What's most remarkable is the way they begin to embody balance. The INFJ male who once wore himself down chasing after wounded souls now walks with a quiet steadiness. He knows he cannot save everyone, and he no longer tries to. He understands that some people are not ready to heal, and that their journey is not his responsibility. By letting go of the burden to rescue, he creates space for his true calling to flourish. He becomes more present, more creative, more visionary, and, paradoxically, more effective in bringing healing into the world than he ever was when trapped in the cycle of overgiving. When INFJ men fully outgrow the weight of the white knight syndrome, their lives begin to radiate a different kind of strength, one that is no longer about proving themselves through sacrifice, but about embodying authenticity in every aspect of their being. This shift is subtle yet profound. They walk into rooms without the need to save or to fix, but their presence alone offers comfort and grounding. People sense their steadiness, their depth, their ability to see without judgment. What once was a compulsion to intervene now becomes an aura of reassurance that others instinctively trust. In family life, this transformation is especially powerful. INFJ men who once poured themselves out to the point of exhaustion now learn to give in ways that sustain both them and their loved ones. As partners and fathers, they stop trying to be martyrs and instead model what balanced love looks like. Love that is nurturing, but also guided by boundaries. Their children grow up not only feeling cared for, but also learning the value of self-respect and discernment. Their partners, too, benefit from this maturity because they are no longer put in the position of relying on a man who burns himself out to meet every need. Instead, they share life with someone who knows how to balance giving with resting, supporting with standing firm. In communities, the INFJ male who has shed the savior role becomes a natural anchor. He is the quiet leader, the one people turn to when chaos strikes, not because he rushes in to rescue, but because he listens deeply, discerns clearly, and responds wisely. His strength is not loud or domineering. It is calm and stabilizing. This kind of influence often goes unnoticed by the wider world, but within smaller circles, it is transformative. He becomes the person who inspires others to grow, not by carrying them, but by reminding them of their own strength. Creatively, INFJ men at this stage often leave behind works that outlast them, whether it is through art, writing, music, or other forms of expression. They pour into creations that hold timeless truths. Unlike their earlier years, where their energy was consumed by one-on-one rescues, their matured energy allows them to create things that ripple outward. A book, a painting, a project, or even a conversation that touches lives across generations becomes their legacy. Their need to save has transformed into a gift to inspire, to awaken, and to remind people that depth still matters in a shallow world. Even in their personal solitude, the growth is evident. INFJ men no longer fear being alone because solitude is no longer a prison. It is a sanctuary. In their alone time, they recharge, reflect, and refine their vision. This solitude no longer isolates them from others, but equips them to engage more powerfully when they do connect. They understand that their energy is finite, and they treat it as sacred, offering it intentionally rather than recklessly. As they age, many INFJ men also find a deeper sense of peace with themselves. The battles of youth, the longing to be understood, the frustration of being unseen, the exhaustion of overgiving, give way to a quiet acceptance. They stop fighting the fact that they are rare and instead embrace it as a gift. Instead of asking why they are different, they begin to see how their difference is needed. This acceptance often brings with it a softening. They no longer carry the same intensity of needing to prove or to rescue. They simply live, and in living authentically, they naturally inspire others. The world may still not fully understand the INFJ man, but he no longer seeks that understanding. He knows who he is, and that knowing is enough. And perhaps that is the most profound victory of all. Not that he saved everyone else, but that he finally saved himself. If you're an INFJ, ensure to check out our INFJ Mastery Toolkit. The link is in the description of this video.